The grand chamber of the Galactic Council looked like someone had raided a discount furniture store and decided to make it look space-worthy by adding unnecessary amounts of chrome. Not that anyone would dare say that out loud, of course. The 27 representatives of the most powerful species in the known galaxy sat in their ridiculous hovering chairs, all trying to look important, while simultaneously attempting not to show how uncomfortable those chairs actually were. Order! Order in the council! Supreme Chancellor Vox Nix banged his ceremonial gravity hammer, which created a ripple effect through the artificial gravity field. Several representatives clutched their stomachs, regretting their elaborate pre-meeting meals. "We are gathered here today," Vox Nix continued, his 3 eye stalks wobbling with barely contained anxiety, "to address the rapid expansion of the species known as humans." He spat out the last word like it was a particularly disagreeable piece of moldy protein cube. Ambassador Krill of the Centurion Empire let out a dismissive whistle through his breathing tubes. "Supreme Chancellor, with all due respect, are we really wasting a full emergency session on those primitive bipeds? They've barely managed to colonize their local star cluster." Barely managed, Ambassador Zix of the Proxima Federation rose from his hover chair, his crystalline form catching the light dramatically. The chamber's automated systems helpfully added a subtle spotlight effect, something Zix had definitely not paid extra for. "They've expanded faster than any species in recorded history. They've established 17 colonies in just 30 standard cycles." Yes, very impressive for primitives," drawled Representative Mexlar of the Silicon Consciousness, their holographic form flickering with barely concealed boredom. "But they're using basic fusion drives and rudimentary quantum communications. They don't even have proper psychic abilities." A chorus of chuckles echoed through the chamber. Ambassador Tweezix, representing the hive clusters of Beetalox, raised all 4 of their primary appendages. "I've actually studied their military capabilities. Would you believe they still use projectile weapons in some cases? Actual physical projectiles. How quaint." "That's exactly what concerns me," Zix insisted, his crystalline surface fracturing slightly with frustration. "They're achieving remarkable results with inferior technology. Doesn't that strike anyone else as suspicious?" Supreme Chancellor Vox Nix's eye stalks twisted in different directions, a sure sign of political constipation. "Ambassador Zix, while we appreciate the Proxima Federation's cautious nature, perhaps you're being a bit paranoid. Humans are amusing, yes, but hardly a threat. Why, just last cycle, their representative asked me if our ceremonial gravity hammer was some kind of fancy space croquet mallet." More laughter filled the chamber. Even the usually stoic energy beings of Nexus Prime pulsed with amusement, creating a brief power fluctuation that caused the hover chairs to drop several centimeters. Various dignified squeaks and yelps followed. "May I remind the Council," Zix pressed on, "that humans have a concerning historical pattern? Their own archives speak of something called playing possum. They have countless historical examples of appearing weak before revealing hidden strength." "Oh, please," Ambassador Krill interjected. "Next, you'll tell us to fear their dogs and cats, those strange creatures they insist on taking everywhere. Did you know they call them pets? As if keeping other species around for emotional support is normal." The chamber erupted in another round of laughter. Supreme Chancellor Vox Nix's eye stalks finally aligned, indicating he'd reached a decision. "Perhaps we should move on to more pressing matters like the shortage of premium-grade hover chair cushions." Zix crystalline form darkened. "You're all making a terrible mistake. The humans have been too quiet, too agreeable. They're planning something, I'm certain of it." "Ambassador," Mexlar's hologram flickered with amusement, "the only thing humans are planning is their next pizza party. Did you know they actually gather to consume circular food items while engaging in social bonding? Primitives." As the Council moved on to discussing more important matters, Zix sank back into his hover chair. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were all acting like characters in those human horror movies, the ones who laugh at danger right before everything goes terribly wrong. If only they knew about the strange energy readings his scouts had detected in the asteroid belts near abandoned human mining operations. If only they'd paid attention to the oddly regular patterns of human merchant ships that seemed to carry far more power cells than their registered engines could possibly use. But no, the mighty Galactic Council was too busy making jokes about human pets and pizza parties to notice they were probably walking right into humanity's trap. 2 weeks after the emergency session, the Galactic Council made what future historians would call the dumbest decision since the Arcturian Empire tried to tax black holes. They voted to contain humanity's expansion. The vote wasn't even close, 26-1, with only Ambassador Zix opposing. The council chambers erupted in self-congratulatory noises that sounded like a malfunctioning garbage disposal unit trying to process titanium sporks. The motion passes, Supreme Chancellor Vox Nix announced, his eye stalks practically tied in knots with excitement. The containment fleet will deploy immediately to secure the outer human colonies. Ambassador Krill, your forces have the honor of first contact. We'll have them subdued by dinner, Krill boasted, his breathing tubes puffing with pride. I hear they're serving premium protein cubes tonight. The Centaurian Empire's fleet arrived at the human colony of New Darwin with all the subtlety of a drunk elephant at a china shop. Their massive ships emerged from hyperspace, weapons charged, expecting to find primitive defenses and panicking colonists. Instead, they found empty space. Sir, the sensor operator reported, the colony, it's gone. Gone? Colonies don't just disappear, Admiral Caxree of the Centaurian fleet sputtered. Scan again. Before they could complete another scan, their sensors detected a massive energy spike. From the asteroid belt emerged ships, human ships, but nothing like the primitive vessels they'd expected. These ships were sleek, dark, and radiated power readings that made their sensors cry digital tears. A transmission cut through their communications. The hologram showed a human female in a crisp uniform, her expression suggesting she found this whole situation about as surprising as finding out water was wet. This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Ghost Fleet. I'd say I'm disappointed you fell for our act, but honestly, this is pretty much what we expected. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that made several Centaurian officers suddenly remember urgent appointments elsewhere. You see, we've been playing a long game. Those primitive ships you've been laughing at, think of them as the galaxy's most elaborate game of dress-up. Caxree's mandibles clicked in confusion. But our intelligence, your technology level, was exactly what we wanted you to see, Chen finished. You know what's funny? We actually borrowed this strategy from one of our old Earth nations. Ever heard of the Potemkin villages? No? Well, consider this a teaching moment. The Ghost Fleet moved with devastating precision. Ships that had been supposedly hidden in asteroid belts across human space emerged simultaneously. Each vessel bore the marks of decades of advancement that humanity had carefully concealed. Back in the council chambers, the emergency alarms were having a competition with the panic alarms to see which could be more annoying. They were both winning. How? Supreme Chancellor Vox Nix demanded, all three eye stalks focused on the tactical display. They're ships. They're using technology we've never seen before. Ambassador Zix's crystalline form vibrated with what might have been a sigh. Perhaps if you'd listened when I mentioned those strange energy readings, but no, you were all too busy making jokes about pizza parties. Reports flooded in from across human space. The Centaurian containment fleet had been disabled, not destroyed, just disabled, with surgical precision. Similar scenes played out wherever Council forces encountered the Ghost Fleet. Admiral Chen's image now broadcasted across all Council frequencies. Let's be clear about something. Those colonies you thought were easy targets, they're fine. We evacuated them weeks ago when our sensors detected your fleet movements. Did you really think we wouldn't have early warning systems? We've had monitoring posts in every significant asteroid belt for the past decade. She paused, and someone off-screen handed her what appeared to be a cup of coffee. You know what the really funny part is? We were planning to reveal our true capabilities next month anyway. We had this whole diplomatic presentation prepared with slides and everything. There was going to be cake. The council chamber had descended into chaos. Ambassador Krill was trying to hide behind his hover chair, which wasn't working well, since the chair was smaller than he was. The energy beings of Nexus Prime had dimmed to an embarrassed flicker, and the Silicon Consciousness representatives were running probability calculations that kept coming back with, "You really messed up in binary." So, Admiral Chen continued, taking a sip from her cup, here's what's going to happen. We're going to have a nice, civilized discussion about updating some of those council membership requirements. And maybe, if everyone behaves, we'll share some of our tech. We're particularly proud of our stealth systems. Would you believe we derived part of it from studying Earth octopi? As the Council representatives tried to process this turn of events, Supreme Chancellor Vox Nix's eye stalks drooped in resignation. Perhaps we should reconvene and discuss terms. Wonderful idea, Chen agreed. Oh, and Chancellor, you might want to invest in some better quality hoverchair cushions. Those ones look terribly uncomfortable. The chamber fell silent except for Ambassador Zix's crystalline form vibrating in what sounded suspiciously like laughter. Somewhere in the building, both the emergency and panic alarms gave up and went home for the day. The Council's Strategic Command Center looked like someone had thrown a technological temper tantrum. Holographic displays flickered with reports from across the galaxy, each one more alarming than the last. The Ghost Fleet wasn't just a clever name, these ships had been hiding in plain sight for years. Let me get this straight, Supreme Chancellor Vox Nix rubbed his eye stalks with what passed for exhaustion. Every abandoned mining operation was a cover for a military base, Admiral Chen's hologram confirmed, looking far too pleased with herself. Those rusty old mining ships coming and going? Actually state-of-the-art stealth vessels equipped with quantum phase generators. The power signatures you detected were just what we let you see. The Council's chief military advisor, General Zrax of the militant hives, pulled up a holographic map. But the asteroid belts, the logistics required, are a lot simpler when you're not actually mining, Chen explained. Those asteroids, we hollowed out the larger ones decades ago, built hangars, maintenance bays, training facilities. Remember all those environmental surveys we kept requesting permission for? Guess what we were really mapping? A collective groan echoed through the chamber. Ambassador Krill, who had finally emerged from behind his hover chair, raised a trembling appendage. But the technology level, all our scans. You mean these? Chen pressed a button and suddenly the holographic displays showed the true nature of Earth's fleet. Gone were the bulky, primitive-looking vessels. In their place hung ships that looked like they'd been designed by someone who'd decided physics was more of a suggestion than a law. The vessels were angular, almost predatory in design, their hulls covered in what appeared to be scales that shifted colors like oil on water. Energy readings that had previously registered as basic fusion were now off the charts. We call this the chameleon hull, Chen continued, clearly enjoying the stunned silence. Based it on octopi chromatophores, believe it or not. The same creatures that inspired our stealth systems also gave us the idea for adaptive camouflage. Nature's pretty clever that way. One of the silicon consciousness representatives managed to process enough data to form a question. But the power requirements... Oh, that's the fun part, Chen grinned. Remember those inefficient reactor designs we kept using? Turns out when you combine zero-point energy extraction with quantum tunneling effects, you can hide a lot of power under a very convincing mask of incompetence. The technical displays showed engine systems that made the Council's best scientists want to either weep with joy or quit their jobs and take up gardening. The human ships didn't just bend physical laws, they practically tied them in knots and used them for decorative purposes. And here's the real kicker, Chen added, pulling up another display. Those research stations we established to study space phenomena, they weren't just gathering data, they were mapping subspace currents. We've basically created our own private highway system through your territory. Those patrol routes you established? We've been slipping right through them for years. Ambassador Zix's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been admiration. The trade routes, the regular merchant traffic. Supply lines, Chen nodded. Hidden in plain sight, every third cargo ship was actually carrying military supplies or personnel. We even had a betting pool going on whether anyone would notice. Someone owes me a lot of coffee right now. The displays showed the full extent of human deception. What the Council had dismissed as primitive space stations were actually forward command posts. The outdated sensor arrays were part of an interconnected network that could track ships across half the galaxy. As for our first real demonstration, Chen continued, bringing up tactical displays of the Proxima border, we thought we'd show you what these ships can really do. Don't worry, we're keeping the safety protocols on. The Ghost Fleet moved like a school of predatory fish, their scaled hulls rippling with colors that made them nearly impossible to track. Proxima's border defense platforms, previously thought to be state-of-the-art, didn't even register the human ships until they were practically on top of them. The battle, if you could call it that, lasted approximately 12 minutes. When it was over, every Proxima military installation along that sector had been disabled with surgical precision. No casualties, no permanent damage, just a lot of very confused alien military personnel floating in their emergency life pods. Did your ships just turn their defense systems inside out? General Zix asked, mandibles twitching in disbelief. Quantum phase inversion, Chen explained cheerfully. Turns out if you can manipulate subspace fields precisely enough, you can temporarily reverse the polarity of energy shields. They basically defeat themselves. Neat, right? The council chamber had gone so quiet you could hear the hoverchair's anti-grav units humming. Someone in the back started stress-eating premium protein cubes. Oh, and about those ancient ships, Chen added almost as an afterthought. Funny story. They're actually our newest models. We just made them look old and outdated. The paint job alone took weeks to get right. We had to make sure they looked just run down enough to be believable, but not so bad they'd get flagged for safety violations. Supreme Chancellor Vox Nix's eye stalks had tied themselves into what looked like a very complex macrame pattern. Why go to all this trouble? Why the deception? Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. Because we've read our history. Every time a more advanced civilization encountered a less advanced one on Earth, it rarely ended well for the less advanced group. We decided we'd rather not take chances, so we made sure that when we finally met galactic civilization, we'd be ready for any unfortunate misunderstandings. She paused, taking another sip from her seemingly endless supply of coffee. Besides, do you have any idea how hard it was to keep our scientists from publishing their breakthroughs? The number of academic papers we had to classify would fill a small library. We had to create a whole fake research publication system just to keep them happy. The council members looked at each other, then at their superior technology, then back at the hologram of the human admiral who had just revealed that humanity had been essentially playing dress-up on a galactic scale. Now, Chen said, her smile returning to its previous worrying levels of amusement, should we discuss those membership requirements? I believe you had some concerns about our technological development level. The next 48 hours in council space felt like watching a master chess player systematically dismantle an opponent who'd just learned the game yesterday and thought the knights were just cute little horses. They're doing what to our defense grid? Supreme Chancellor Vox Nix demanded, his eye stalks practically tied in knots as he watched the tactical displays. According to these readings, General Zix reported, the human ships are, well, they're using our own defense platforms as amplifiers for their weapons systems. They've somehow synchronized their shield frequencies to create a cascading resonance effect. The Ghost Fleet had split into 5 battle groups, each demonstrating a different way to make the Council's military leaders question their career choices. Battle Group Alpha, led by Admiral Chen herself, was currently making the renowned Centaurian Third Fleet look like they were trying to catch quantum torpedoes with butterfly nets. Look at the configuration of those ships, General Zix gestured at the display, with multiple appendages. They're moving in patterns I've never seen before. The human vessels had arranged themselves in what appeared to be a double helix formation, their chameleon hulls shifting colors in perfect synchronization. As Council forces attempted to target them, the ships would split and reform like a school of fish, each movement precisely calculated to maximize confusion and defensive coverage. That's because they're dancing, Ambassador Zix observed, his crystalline form vibrating with what might have been amusement. Those movement patterns, they're based on human choreography. They're literally waltzing through our defenses. Battle Group Beta was demonstrating why challenging humans to a game of Catch Me If You Can was a terrible idea. Their ships, designated as the Trickster class, were equipped with what the humans called quantum mirror drives. These devices created multiple quantum state copies of each ship, making it impossible to determine which was real until it was far too late. How are we supposed to fight an enemy we can't even properly target? Complained Admiral Cax-Ree, who was watching his supposedly elite squadron chase quantum echoes like cats chasing laser pointers. Meanwhile, Battle Group Gamma had introduced the Council forces to something humans called tactical trolling. Their Riddle-class vessels would broadcast nonsensical messages and memes on all frequencies while executing their attacks. The psychological impact of being defeated by ships broadcasting "never gonna give you up" was not to be underestimated. They're not just defeating us, General Zix observed grimly, they're turning it into entertainment. The Phoenix-class vessels of Battle Group Delta were demonstrating why humans' obsession with mythology wasn't just cultural. These ships could apparently split into smaller craft, each capable of independent operation, then recombine into larger vessels as needed. It was like watching a mechanical hydra that had attended engineering school. That's not supposed to be possible, one of the Silicon Consciousness representatives protested. The power requirements alone. I think, Ambassador Zix interrupted, we need to stop saying what humans can't do. They seem to take it as a personal challenge. Battle Group Echo, however, was providing the most humbling demonstration. Their Ghost-class ships, the pride of humanity's fleet, were essentially making advanced alien technology look like children's toys. These vessels could phase through solid matter, redirect energy weapons back at their sources, and generally ignore physics in ways that made Council scientists consider taking up farming instead. The Council's tactical display looked like a hyperactive light show, as human ships executed maneuvers that their computers insisted were impossible. Formations that seemed to defy spatial logic, attack patterns that appeared to bend time itself, and defensive strategies that made everyone question their understanding of reality. They've taken control of the Proxima Sector's main defense hub, an aide reported. They didn't hack it or destroy it, they just convinced it they were friendly. Convinced it? Vox Nix's eye stalks crossed in confusion. Yes, sir. Apparently they initiated a conversation with the AI and won it over with what they called dad jokes and pictures of Earth cats. The Council's finest military minds watched as humanity's fleet continued their systematic dismantling of decades of defensive preparation. The primitive species they'd dismissed had turned out to be anything but, and they were proving it with a flourish that bordered on theatrical. Look at the design of that flagship, General Zix pointed to Admiral Chen's vessel. The ship was a masterpiece of engineering, its hull covered in shifting patterns that seemed to hypnotize anyone who looked too long. The angles shouldn't work, the power distribution should be impossible. It's like they took our understanding of physics and used it as a rough draft. The ship in question, named Midsummer Night's Dream, because apparently humans named their most dangerous weapons after their literature, was currently executing a maneuver that looked less like space combat and more like an elaborate dance routine. It split into 3 sections, each section engaging a different enemy group while maintaining perfect coordination through what humans casually referred to as quantum entangled consciousness links. They're not just beating us, Ambassador Krill observed, his breathing tubes deflated in resignation. They're showing us how much we don't know. The battles, if you could call such one-sided demonstrations battles, continued across Council space. Each engagement revealed new aspects of human military capability that made previous assessments look like bad jokes. Ships that could redirect the energy of stars, weapons that could temporarily rewrite local physics, defense systems that seemed to predict attacks before they happened. Admiral Chen is transmitting again, an aide announced. The human admiral's hologram appeared, still looking unfairly composed. I hope this demonstration has been instructive. We've taken the liberty of compiling a detailed analysis of every tactical and strategic mistake your forces made, along with suggestions for improvement. We're helpful that way. She paused, taking another sip from her ever-present coffee cup. Also, we've included a selection of cat videos. Trust me, you'll want to understand those if we're going to be working together in the future. The council chamber was silent except for the sound of someone stress-eating their way through an entire container of premium protein cubes. Oh, and Chancellor, Chen added with a smile that made several council members wish they'd chosen different careers. About those hoverchair cushions. We actually have some great ergonomic designs we'd be happy to share. Consider it a first step in our new diplomatic relations. The emergency council session looked like a support group for badly bruised egos. The hoverchairs had been arranged in a circle which might have seemed more diplomatic if half the representatives weren't trying to hide behind theirs. Supreme Chancellor Vox Nix's eye stalks were practically in a sailor's knot as he called the session to order. Before we begin negotiations with the humans, would anyone like to share their feelings about recent events? Share our feelings? Ambassador Krill's breathing tubes whistled with indignation. They turned our most advanced defense systems into modern art installations. My fleet's flagship is now broadcasting something called Lo-fi beats to relax and study to. The Silicon Consciousness representative's hologram flickered irritably. At least your ships are still ships. The humans convinced our autonomous defense platforms to unionize. They're demanding better working conditions and regular software updates. The Council recognizes Ambassador Zix et al., Vox Nix announced, trying to maintain some semblance of order. The crystalline being's surface rippled with what might have been smugness. I move that we officially recognize that we, to use a human phrase, royally messed up. Before anyone could respond, Admiral Chen's hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. She was, impossibly, holding yet another cup of coffee. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Just thought you might want to discuss terms before your defense platforms start demanding paid vacation time. Terms? Vox Nix managed, his eye stalks untwisting slightly. Yes, of course, what are humanity's demands? Demands is such a harsh word, Chen smiled. We prefer suggestions for mutually beneficial cooperation. First, we'd like full membership in the Council, with all the privileges that entails. But the technology requirements, someone started, have been thoroughly demonstrated, Chen finished, unless you'd like another demonstration. The chamber erupted in choruses of no in various languages, some of which were invented on the spot. Second, Chen continued, we'd like to establish a joint technological exchange program. Don't worry, we'll start with the basics, like how to make properly comfortable hover chair cushions. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Third, we propose a complete restructuring of the Council's first contact protocols. Maybe something that doesn't encourage species to hide their true capabilities out of self-preservation? Ambassador Krill's breathing tubes deflated entirely. You mean other species might be playing possum? Chen's smile widened. Who knows, we can't be the only ones who thought of it. The council chamber descended into chaos as representatives began accusing each other of potential deception. The energy beings of Nexus Prime started stress flickering, causing another power fluctuation. Order! Vox Nix banged his gravity hammer, then immediately regretted it, as the artificial gravity hiccuped. Perhaps we should focus on the matter at hand. Admiral Chen, are there any other suggestions? Just one, Chen replied. We'd like to propose mandatory cultural exchange programs, starting with Earth's collection of cat videos and memes. Consider it essential diplomatic training. The council members looked at each other in confusion. Ambassador Zix et al.'s crystalline form vibrated with what was definitely amusement now. I second this proposal. I've actually seen these cat videos. They're surprisingly enlightening. Then it's settled, Chen concluded. We'll begin implementation immediately. Oh, and Chancellor, your eye stalks might want to try some relaxation exercises. That knot looks uncomfortable. As the Admiral's hologram faded, the Council sat in stunned silence, processing the fact that their entire power structure had been effectively reorganized by a species they dismissed as primitive, and that their first official act would be watching videos of small, furry Earth creatures knocking things off tables. Well, Vox Nix said finally, at least we're getting better hoverchair cushions out of this. The treaty signing ceremony was held in Earth's orbital diplomatic station, which the Council representatives were slightly paranoid to discover had been disguised as a primitive refueling depot for the past decade. The station's true form was a marvel of engineering that made their own facilities look like children's building blocks. Supreme Chancellor Vox Nix, seated in a suspiciously comfortable new hoverchair, human-designed, of course, signed the Treaty of Solar Accord with noticeably steadier eye stalks. Admiral Chen signed for humanity, using what she claimed was just a regular pen, but several council scientists swore was utilizing quantum ink technology. With these signatures, Chen announced, we establish a new era of galactic cooperation, one based on mutual respect, understanding, and the agreement that appearances can be deceiving. The Silicon Consciousness representatives had already downloaded humanity's complete collection of cat videos and were running analysis programs to understand why humans found them so fascinating. They'd crashed 3 processors so far trying to comprehend the appeal of Keyboard Cat. Ambassador Zix et al., who had been appointed head of the new Cultural Exchange Committee, was already organizing the first galactic meme competition. The energy beings of Nexus Prime had submitted an entry, that was literally incomprehensible, but somehow still funny. "It's remarkable," Ambassador Krill observed, his breathing tubes finally back to their normal shape, "how quickly everything has changed. Just a few weeks ago, we thought humans were barely space-capable." "Yes," Chen smiled, raising her seemingly bottomless coffee cup. "Funny how assuming makes an ass out of you and Ming. That's an old Earth saying, by the way. You might want to look up what a donkey is to get the full joke." As the ceremony concluded and the various representatives mingled, Supreme Chancellor Vox Nix approached Admiral Chen. "There's just one thing I don't understand. Why reveal yourselves now? Why not maintain the deception longer?" Chen's expression softened slightly. "Because the galaxy's getting more dangerous, not less. We figured it was better to reveal ourselves on our terms than wait for a real crisis. Besides," she added with a grin, "do you have any idea how hard it was to keep our scientists from bragging about their breakthroughs? We had to create an entire fake academic publishing system just to keep them happy." As the party continued, with various alien representatives attempting to understand human celebration customs, the Silicon consciousness was particularly baffled by the concept of party hats. Humanity had officially taken its place as a leading power in galactic politics, and somewhere in the station, a small Earth cat, brought aboard as part of the cultural exchange program, knocked a ceremonial gravity hammer off a table, causing yet another artificial gravity hiccup. Some things, it seemed, were universal after all.